Hi, this is Brendan Davis from Bedrock Games and the Bedrock blog, and I'm here with Dion for another episode of Wuxia Weekend. And tonight we're talking about the film The Duel. This is a 2000 movie that is directed by Andy Lau and stars Andy Lau, and is based on a Lu Xiaofeng story. It's a movie that neither of us have really seen. I've been meaning to see it because my co-writer for the Ruthless Blood game that I was working on has mentioned it a number of times, and so I've been intending to watch it. So this was my first time watching it, and this was Dion's first time watching it, and I think we both had, I would say, strong reactions to the movie. I think, Dion, your reaction was a little bit more negative. It's basically kind of a murder mystery type film centered around an impending duel between two swordsmen. One of them, and again, this was dubbed, and I noticed that the dubs and the subs were not lining up 100% in terms of the names, but it sounded like the swordsman who issued the challenge to the duel, his name was Yip-Kul Sun, something like that. Mm-hmm. And the other one is a character from the Lu Xiaofeng books, and I'm going to mispronounce his name horribly, but it's something along the lines of Jimen Chushu, and I know I just horribly butchered it, but you could just call him Snowblower to simplify it, because that's sort of it's I guess what his name basically kind of means. And so in the
movie they called him Simone.
Yeah, but not everybody did. Some of the people doing the dubs said the name differently, and so that because I was gonna just call him, I think at some points they were also calling him Simon, so it got even more. So it was like Simon, Simon, and Jimun, and it just got really confusing. But it's about an impending duel between these two characters against the backdrop of a murder mystery, and the detective is the Lu Xiaofeng character, and this is called Dragon 9. And there's another character played by Zhao Wei called Princess Phoenix, and and she's sort of becomes like a love interest for the Andy Lau character. And there's another female protagonist called what's her name? Cheung? I can't remember what her name was, but she becomes the love interest for Snowblower. So there's like this parallel between the two characters as they're preparing for the duel. And at the very end, there's all this intrigue that sort of unfolds. So, and on top of all that, this is kind of done in the style of a comedy. There's serious moments, but there's a lot of comedic elements to it. So it really shapes the overall experience of the movie. And the wuxia stuff is all very effects driven. Would you say so, Dion, that this is an effects driven wuxia film?
It's definitely effects driven. It's very sci-fi and unrealistic and interesting.
So before we start getting into a broader discussion, what was your overall reaction to the movie?
Well, my overall reaction to the movie, as you said, was very strong and very negative. I think we were maybe 15 or 20 minutes into the movie, and I texted you, what little weird movie are we watching? Because I was I don't even want to say disgusted, but I was like, where is this thing going? I was kind of sort of lost, and I don't know if it was my mood or if it was the comedic elements weren't hitting me the right way.
Okay.
It started out serious. It went comedic. It was all over the place just in that first 15 to 20 minutes, and I wanted the movie to make up its mind, kind of thing. So, yeah, my first initial reaction was, I don't know if I can finish watching this movie. And you even asked me if I wanted to finish it or not. And I was like, no, I'm going to just plow through it because I want to see what your reaction is, to see if it was the same as mine. And I figured you would like it more than me because our tastes are somewhat different. Mm-hmm. But as I was watching it, I don't know at what point that I got really interested in the movie. So the end part, was really, really good, and I had a really strong reaction to the end, which you'll be surprised at, that I actually shed a tear or two.
I did too, actually. I can admit I did too at the end.
So I went from a really negative reaction in the beginning to a more positive reaction.
What's interesting to me, it's interesting when that happens. So later in the episode, I want to discuss that because this happens a lot when I do Farscape reviews with Adam. There'll be episodes that I start out really not liking for the first 10 minutes, and then I like them by the end. And that's always like a fascinating transition for me. So it makes me just think a lot more about the episode, regardless of what I give it for a final rating. So I have some, I'm curious, like, how, about that. And we'll talk about it in a little bit. My reaction to the film is, number one, you had sent me a message about the dubs, so I was really focused on the sound. And I did notice a few things. Number one, at least in the first scene, and I don't know if this was because I just got used to it and I wasn't noticing it anymore, but it seemed like when they dubbed it, and I haven't seen it with the subtitles, so I don't know, but it seemed like they got rid of a lot of the other sound effects, and all you heard were the actors' voices and occasional important sound effects. Do you know what I mean? But the atmospheric sound effects kind of seemed to be missing a little bit. And so, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say that kind of probably might have been my issue too, along with the fact that the voices were irritating. Especially the female voices were more irritating to me. But yeah, the first scene I liked because it was serious, but like you said, all you heard was voices. You didn't hear anything else that probably you should have heard going on in that scene. It didn't. Some of the scenes did feel that way, like they were in a vacuum and it was just voices, like there was nothing else going on, when clearly there are other things going on that you probably should have heard.
Well, and also on top of that, it was there was a weird, it wasn't present through the whole soundtrack, but there was like a white noise sound that was sort of just kind of in the background a little bit. And that was affecting how I enjoyed the program. So I do think that there was something going on with the sound that we probably can't pin on the movie itself. Do you know what I mean? It's just sort of a product of the transfer and all that. But I will say this was made in 2000, and a lot of the TV shows, like a lot of the Wuxia series that I've seen from 2000 and from around that period before 2002, there seems to be a weird way that the sound was done that affects my enjoyment of the television show, and I don't notice it on shows that were made in like the early 80s, say. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know if there was a specific thing that was going on that people were doing sound wise that impacted this. But I have to say, once I got past that, I really liked the movie. I was it's definitely got huge comedic elements, and that is not going to land well with a lot of people. I watch a lot of 90s wuxia, and a lot of that has comedy in it. And so I'm fine with it if it's done well. I found that the comedy worked for me. I do think that some of the way that the dubs were done, it almost had an anime effect, the way that the dubbing was done. But because it was funny, it sort of worked. Do you know what I mean? So there was the scene when he's in the brothel with the prostitute in the hot tub, and there's this extended joke about 8s and 9s, and I thought that was very funny. And normally a joke like that doesn't always translate well, but for me it translated well in that moment. And most of the humor like that kind of worked. And I feel like it kind of, because it was humorous like this, it enhanced a lot of the emotional stuff that came later. So all that stuff worked for me. I liked the story, and I liked most of the fight sequences, and I really enjoyed like the relationships between the fighters and the women that they were interested in. Do you know what I mean? Because every single Oh, go ahead.
That was the best part for me, was the establishment and the changing of the relationships, of how they developed.
And
And
so,
I'm all about relationships in a movie.
and also, I mean, it had Vicky Zhao in it, and I thought she was a
Yeah.
very good choice for that character that she played. Because, yeah, I mean, in later movies, you see her playing more serious roles, but like, if you saw her in things like Treasure Ventures and stuff like that, she was kind of playing more cutesy roles like this one, and so it was nice to see her in that type of role. And I don't know, I also Lu Xiaofeng's an unusual wuxia character. He's not like the other guy that's in the duel. What's his name? The snowblower character. He's almost your more typical Gulong protagonist in a wuxia story. Do you know what I mean? But Lu Xiaofeng is a sort of eccentric womanizer who is really intelligent, and his big thing is he's good at lightness kung fu. So he's good at like avoiding attacks. Do you know what I mean? So he's not necessarily the lethal guy that Snowblower is. And I like having him as the main character, but I also like the fact that there's other characters around him. So it's not one of these wuxia movies where it's like a lone guy who's just on his own and sort of like a lone gun in a Wild West movie. Do you know what I mean? You get to see the characters play off of each other, and that, I think that makes the story more interesting. So, so I definitely had a lot of fun watching it. Again, I just watched it for the first time, like literally, 30 minutes ago. So it's still kind of all sinking in. What for you? You said that you started out really not liking it, and then you started to enjoy it more as you went along. Do you think that if you went back and rewatched it, you'd have a different view of it, or do you think that it's just that at a certain point the movie gets good, and so?
Well, I started before the podcast began. I started watching the first 30 minutes again because that's the part that I really had trouble paying attention to. And I found that on the second viewing, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was the first time.
Okay.
So, but I do think the movie does get better as the relationships are, for me anyway, the relationships are established between the male characters and the female characters. Once you can see each relationship connection made, for me it got better than the first time. I'm watching it now with the sound off, and it looks like a more interesting movie.
Okay.
Without the voices.
Yeah, the voices are really kind of all exaggerated, I would say.
Yes.
And they really vary. Like some of them it sounds like, oh, that's probably the actress doing it, or somebody who sounds like the actress doing it. And some of them sound like, like Cheech Marin or something. Do you know what I mean? There's like it just has it doesn't sound like those old Shaw Brothers dubs that are really, really bad, where it sounds like you got a bunch of drunk guys in a room doing it. It sounds professional, but something does feel a little bit off about it, and I don't quite know what it is. Also, they did use a lot of plain language in the description. There's a lot of vernacular, and maybe, I don't know if that was an issue for you.
There was some swearing too that I think that was not necessarily not appropriate, but it just didn't need to be there.
Okay.
They did use.
There was one scene where it was very important though, when he declares his love to the prostitute after she swears. That's one scene where it seemed like it was
appropriate, but there were some other scenes where like Dragon 9 is talking to the other dragons, and Princess Phoenix comes in, and I mean he called her a spoiled brat, and he could have kept calling her a brat, but then he used bitch, and it was just kind of like that was completely unnecessary to me. And there were some situations like that where it was completely unnecessary to use the foul language. It didn't add anything to the scene. To me, it kind of took away from it.
And the thing about that is, I don't know I wish we had like Jeremy here or somebody who knew the original language, because I don't know how much of it was a reflection of what the actual, original track was intended to be. Like in the I haven't read the book that this one's based on, but I've read other books in the series, and in the first book I think, and again, this might be the translation I read, so I still don't really know, but they use the word asshole a lot in that one. And again, it might have been another word in Chinese and the translator just chose asshole, I don't know. But they describe Lu Xiaofeng at one point as the most lovable asshole. And multiple characters invoke this word. And I don't think that I've seen words like that used as much in some of the other books by the same writer. So I feel like, I don't know, maybe it's part of the series, but I'm not sure. Maybe like the feel of the series is more coarse. Because like his love interest in the book, there is like that prostitute character in the, you know what I mean? So like, so I don't know, but I think that, in some ways, I thought that stuff added to it. In some ways, I thought it maybe took away from it in this version. I kind of liked the lowbrow humor approach that was sprinkled throughout the movie. I thought that was, and there was like a lot of fun wordplay and just things like that. So that all worked for me.
See, I think that was kind of missed on me because I wasn't paying attention, and I was so, I guess, irritated by the dubbing that and that's one of the reasons why I didn't pay as close attention as I should have, was because the dubbing for me was so bad.
Well, there's also other things too. There's weird anachronisms in it, and again, I think they could be explained in the context of the series. But like in the opening sequence, he's got what look like modern sunglasses on. And that's something that you see that in wuxia shows sometimes, but it feels like it's kind of done for humor or whatever. And in this one, I was thinking, well, in the books, he does have a friend who's like a gadget maker, so maybe he just made him a pair of these like really nice glasses. Because everybody else that has glasses on has like ancient-looking glasses. Do you know what I mean? But
Dragon 9 is the tester of all the other dragons who do the inventions. He wears all those things. So the sunglasses didn't seem out of place to me. But when they were talking about the telescope.
Oh, Marco Polo's telescope.
And he asked if there was a zoom on it. I was like, really? Okay, that word wouldn't have been around then.
No, there is that's that kind of fourth wall breaking humor.
Right.
I don't mind that, but like that definitely is not going to be everybody's cup of tea. And I think that's like, like I can easily see people checking out after things like that rise up in this movie. Do you know what I mean? So it's a certain kind of martial arts film, and it's definitely not going to be everybody's cup of tea. I think that's
definitely not.
I will say this though, if you give it a chance, you get to the stuff that we were talking about at the end. So it's kind of, it's one of these ones that I think, if people initially have that reaction, they might benefit from just kind of marshalling on and seeing how they feel about it in the end.
Exactly.
But yeah, so in terms of the characters, who are your favorite characters in this one?
I can't say I didn't have a favorite character. I liked Dragon 9 because I kind of find him quirky and he is funny. Like at the one scene at the beginning when he goes to the little inn by the side of the road that's run by Norman Chu's character, and he's commenting on how good looking the girls are. He wanted red wine that was as red as her face, which I thought was funny. I think he was kind of quirky, and when he was fighting with the women and he taps one on the butt and says nice ass, and you could tell he's definitely a womanizer.
Yeah.
So when he has a girlfriend, you're kind of like, wait, how's this gonna play out? But no, I liked Dragon 9. I liked Princess Phoenix. She starts off as a brat, but she ends up being a more not traditional, but a more better liked character. I didn't really think of her too much as a brat at the beginning. She's just a spoiled princess.
Yeah.
But I really liked her at the end, especially the last act that she does at the end really made me truly adore her. And then Andy Lau's character, this was a different take for me. I've never really seen Andy Lau in a villainous type role before. All the roles that I've seen have been really good guys.
Well, what about House of Flying Daggers?
Well, yeah, that was the only other one. All the other roles have been.
How did you feel about him in this one? Did you think he made a good villain, or were you wishing he would be the good guy?
No, he made a good villain, and he got his just desserts at the end, I guess you could say. But no, I liked him in the role. He was really good.
And he wasn't a horrible villain too.
No.
He had, like, at the end, his ending was very, it wasn't what I was expecting after the reveal. Do you know what I mean?
No, right.
And so, I mean, and again, spoilers, we'll just say what happened. He basically is using the duel as a distraction, because he has royal blood, but he's a bastard, and he wants to take over the throne from the emperor. And you see very clearly that the current emperor in this movie is a really good one. He has all of the virtues and, nice characteristics that you would want an emperor to have. And so this guy decides to take over because, number one, he's got a bloodline, but number two, he is strong and he is more powerful, and so he feels he deserves it
and
more.
He's obviously the oldest.
Yeah. And so at that moment you're like, oh, he's truly villainous. And you're led to believe he might have been stringing along the Princess Phoenix character, trying to get her to love him so that he could, basically use her to achieve this end. But it turns out that no, he had real feelings for her.
Mm-hmm.
And so after the duel, he gets killed in the duel. He gets stabbed by Snowblower, and he crawls to the throne, and he actually ends up marrying the Princess Phoenix character just before he dies. So, it's a very interesting, development. What did you think of that? And after you answer, I'll give my favorite characters.
I was touched by the whole scene, and I actually cried. Not boohoo cried, but I shed some tears. They definitely played that very well. You never, ever saw any of that coming. I assumed the whole entire time, because of every time she went to see him, he just had like this little hidden smirk that told me that he was playing her the whole time. Okay. And that he did not have true feelings. She was in deep over her head, and you can tell that from the first scene that they have together. And it just builds the whole movie. And his first line to her is, "You're still a little girl to me."
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, he's not gonna have any interest in her whatsoever. And then as developments unfold, to me it's very clear that he's playing her.
Okay.
But then when they had that shift and she asked him, "Did you ever really love me, or were you really just playing me?" And he said, "No, I did honestly love you." And you could tell that he was being honest and not playing a game there.
Yeah. And I got misty-eyed too during that scene. I have to admit, it was well done. It was the way it was done. It was also knowing that, like, there's nothing for her on the other end of this. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That, like, this is sort of like what was the Barefooted Kid? Was that the movie where the woman had it was sort of like almost like a ghost marriage type situation where she's still still married to this person, even though he's no longer alive, and you wonder, okay, is her character going to be, basically never have a relationship in her life, because this is, she marries this guy and he dies. So it was moving for that reason. It was also moving because the transformation of her character over the course of this. Do you know what I mean? Sort of the
yes.
the way that his death shapes her character. I thought, in terms of the characters that I liked in this, I really liked the Lu Xiaofeng character and the way that Nick Cheung portrayed him. I loved the Princess Phoenix character, and a lot of that just had to do with Zhao Wei playing her. But I also really liked Gold Mustache, the character played by Elvis Choi, the one who was giving out the red envelopes with money during the New Year celebration. Yeah. I love him in any movie, but I especially love when he's playing a slightly comedic type character like this. So either when he's playing a character like that or when he's playing a villain, those are the real roles I enjoy him in. And I thought that like the Andy Lau character was fine, but he just wasn't he didn't really stand out to me the way that those characters did. And the snowblower character, I mean, he's kind of meant to be that way, so it sort of works. But it's like, he's not as interesting as Lu Xiaofeng to me. So I, just gravitate more towards that character.
Well, he's not supposed to be.
He's like a ruthless swordsman. He's meant to be,
cold and
so it works. It's just that it's not. He doesn't pop out the way that a more eccentric character like Lu Xiaofeng would. What did you think of the fight choreography and the way that the fights were done with a lot of special effects, and it was sort of more of that real slightly over the top style of wuxia?
It works for the movie since this is a slightly over the top comedic movie. The one thing I didn't like was Norman Chu turning into a big snowball at the beginning to fight. That annoyed me. I was like, that was just stupid. And his character too being so ruthless annoyed me because I like Norman Chu as a honorable stand-up swordsman, not someone who hides behind women.
Just to let people know, he was literally throwing these women in front of him, and they were getting killed by snowblower, and it was actually shocking. The first time it happened, I was genuinely shocked by it.
So was I. Yeah. And that's part of the mystery is that one of the sisters ends up it's 4 sisters, and one of the sisters ends up surviving, and she thinks that Snow actually was the one who killed her sisters and her Sifu, which was Norman Chu. So that has to get sorted out. But the choreography, it wasn't bad. There was a lot of, I guess, especially in the girls' fight scene, there was a lot of posturing with not a lot of sword swiping, but not a lot of hitting anything. When the 4 girls fought with Dragon 9 at the beginning, that was the worst one. But I think the rest of them were pretty good.
Which was kind of a shame because that scene actually looked really good visually. Do you know what I mean? So it would have been awesome if there was more of that. This is the kind of movie where, because it's effects driven, they can kind of get away with posturing. Like when a swordsman stands there and it's really intense, it almost doesn't matter if you don't see him do anything because it can work if it's done right. Do you know what I mean? Like they could literally just cut to him standing behind the guy and there being like a clear sword stroke across them or something, and it would work. But I agree with you about that scene. I think in that scene it kind of it was obvious why they might have been doing that, but as the movie went on, I thought, especially in the later scenes, I was noticing that the effects were blending with the visuals very well. It wasn't just random. Do you know what I mean? Like the way that the sword looked, the way that it just kind of all cohered in an elegant way. So it still is, again, it's 2000 era CGI. So you're going to have 2000 era CGI stuff going on that might not hold up today the way that it would have looked back then. But just in terms of the way that it looked and felt, it kind of had a nice visual appeal to it. during those fight sequences, especially in the fights between Andy Lau and the snowblower character. I thought that those were I don't know, there's just something about the look of those two guys in this movie that really worked, and and the stuff with Lu Xiaofeng was good too. I thought the way that they handled the lightness kung fu worked pretty well also. Though I think there was one or two scenes where I definitely saw wires. I don't know if you noticed that.
Yeah, I wasn't paying that close of attention to detail.
I'm pretty sure I saw wires in a couple of scenes. And I don't mind seeing wires because it kind of lets me know, hey, they're actually on wires. Do you know what I mean? But still, like, when they're too obvious, it can be a little bit distracting. So I don't know. I thought it was fine. It for the style of wuxia that they were going for, I thought it worked. Do you know what I mean? Like they were doing stuff that required a little bit more. I don't know what you would say, sort of heightened reality to make it work. Do you know what I mean? And so the way that they did it, you're not as invested as in like the physical performances as you are in the overall presentation and effect. And so it sort of feels like the actors don't really have to do that much to make it work. Do you know what I mean? Like,
no, not with what they're presenting, because it's all about, to me, a lot of it was about inner strength and the speed of movement. And you're not going to get that much speed in movement just by physical performance. You do need that CGI to make the sword look like it's going like a mile, a million miles a minute. So yeah, you really didn't need the physical performers to.
It's like it's the kind of movie where like they need to just hold the right pose while they're flying backwards.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? It's that kind of movie, which I like. I like that. I think that can work. And again, acting can contribute to it. You can get that Bridget Lynn effect with just having the presence be what sells it. So that does matter. But it's not like you don't need like a Jackie Chan level of physical performance to pull it off.
Hold on a second before you go on. I've just now found the scene where I believe that Andy Lau's character and Princess Phoenix, he really loved her when they're sitting on top of the building, the palace, and he's playing his little flute thing for her. There's a look on his face that tells me that he's really falling for her. So, and I think that's where the movie kind of shifted for me, was right here.
Okay.
From too much silliness to this is my kind of movie.
Okay. That's I definitely think it's one of these movies that sort of eases you into a more serious plot. You know what I mean? And I agree. That's around the time I think that it happens. Other things that I liked about this movie too were just you get a lot of these Zhang type locations. You get the brothel. You get all these various like houses of entertainment and places that are the backdrop for different events that happen in the movie. So I'm trying to remember. I think there might have been like a gambling den in one place, and
there was a casino, and then what I liked was they had the theater. And usually you don't see a theater in these movies, but in this one they had a theater, and there was a performance going on, and Princess Phoenix was watching from the wings, and Andy Lau's character faces some people, and she's watching him fight, and she's falling deeper in love, and it pans outside, and then there's this big light show, which means that Andy Lau has expended some serious power, and then when it cuts back into inside, the guy that he's fighting that's all in black has like light coming out of him.
Yeah.
Do you remember that scene?
Yeah.
I thought that was a really cool scene, but you just don't get to see theater and theater performances much in these movies, and I really appreciated that.
Yeah, no, it's nice. It's nice. I mean, we've done a few movies that do have that kind of theater in them, but but they're not that. It's not as common to see, especially in like the historical ones.
Yes.
I really like too how you had all these different characters in the martial world coming back for grudges and settling scores and all. It just felt like a thriving martial world to me. Do you know what I mean? It gave me a sense of place, and I really enjoyed that. I like when they're able to achieve that in these kind of movies. And again, I thought that a lot of the the Lu Xiaofeng character and just how he's such a, I don't know, just the way that like, I don't know, like, again, like the brothel scene where he's hanging out at the brothel and he's in the hot tub with the lady. Those kind of moments just sort of it's just a different type of wuxia character. So I really like the level of eccentricity going on with the characters in the movie. I think if anything, the part that I wasn't as keen on, but obviously it was essential for the plot, but I wasn't as big on the palace stuff. Do you know what I mean? That's usually not as interesting to me. But I don't see how you could possibly have this movie the way that it was done without the palace, because it's such an important part of the plot.
Yeah, you needed the palace. Yeah. And I also like the way that Dragon 9 and Princess Phoenix's relationship changed from the beginning of the movie to the end, where he basically was calling her a brat, but as they have their little chats here and there, they're seeing each other kind of differently.
Yeah.
As the movie goes on, and that also helped me like the movie more, was that they didn't stay in that hate relationship. They had a mutual respect for each other, trying to figure out this mystery.
Yeah. And I mean, they were friends. Like they clearly have like a
it's a friendly hate.
Yeah,
it's a frenemy kind of thing.
But yeah, so I don't know, what about, I mean, I guess we addressed the comedy, but that obviously didn't land for you. So what was, what do you think it was because of the dubbing, or do you think it was just it wasn't your style of comedy?
I think it was partially dubbing, and maybe it just didn't land correctly the first time. I do think that because I thought the movie was kind of schizophrenic at the beginning, that had some kind of effect on me.
Okay.
Because it's a comedic mystery, but there are some serious things to it. But it just, I don't know, it eventually picks one spot and stays there. So I don't know if the comedic parts, I don't know, with me, with the sound turned off now, they seem to be better. The dubbing might have been the problem.
Okay. Yeah, it's one of these Hong Kong movies that kind of hits every tone over the movie. Do you know what I mean? It hits every note. And so you laugh, you cry, you're on the edge of your seat. Ideally, that all works, but if it doesn't, it's not going to work for you. So, and not everybody's into that rapidly shifting tonality in movies. You know what I mean? So
no, not in the first 30 minutes.
Yeah. It's I am comfortable with it, but that's because the movies that I first like really remember watching from genres like this were from the 90s on video. Do you know what I mean? So like I have really strong memories of those movies, and a lot of them were kind of all over the map. So it's just something where it's like, okay, I know what the deal is with these, but I know that can be jarring. I feel like the dubbing did hurt it though in this case. I feel like even if and not necessarily the dubbing itself, but the stuff we were talking about with the white noise sound in the background, and the way that you didn't quite hear all of the sound effects. It seemed like there was just something off about the sounds in the movie. Also, I feel like this movie doesn't look like it's not bad looking, but the transfer doesn't seem, it seems kind of muddy to me, doesn't it? I mean, again, maybe that's always been a muddy film, But in that opening sequence, I felt like this looks like it's supposed to be a very beautiful scene, and I don't feel like I'm getting all the colors that were originally there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I can see that. Not all the scenes transferred. Like you said, we don't know if it's the transfer, if it was the original movie, but it seems like it should have been brighter.
Yeah, it's like I have a copy of House of Flying Daggers on, I think it's on Blu-ray or DVD. I can't remember, but one of my copies, it was, you know how like sometimes you go to Walmart and you get like a movie for $6, and then you go to watch it and you realize, oh, it's a $6 because the transfer was horrible. And so this is a horrible transfer of House of Flying Daggers. And I remember watching it and I was like, I think it had been like 5 years since I had seen House of Flying Daggers. And I was like, I don't remember it being this muddy at all. I remember it being a vibrant, beautiful movie. This can't possibly be what it looked like. But I wasn't sure until I went and got another copy of it. And I was like, yeah, no, this definitely was not this muddy. So, you know, I had that feeling watching this, but I don't know if that's grounded in anything because this is the first time I saw it. So, but I do wonder if that impacted the, just how some of the comedy played, how some of the other tones played. I definitely think the sound affected the humor. Because even though I thought that the voice acting was actually kind of fine, the way it sounded didn't feel quite right. Do you know what I mean? So, but like I gotta say, like when they were doing like a lot of the humorous exchanges, I kind of liked that the voices were a little over the top. It kind of worked for me. So let's see. We talked about that. Was there anything else about the movie that you wanted to mention before we get into review ratings and recommendations?
Well, we had talked about, before we started watching this movie, about the director, Andy Lau. And it turns out that he was in, remember the movie Future Cops that we watched?
Did we watch Future Cops?
I know we watched we watched Future Cops.
I don't remember, but I'm sure if you're saying we watched it, we watched it.
It's a 1993 comedy.
Okay.
And Andy Lau stars in it. Remember, the cops come from the future.
I don't remember this. I don't remember this. Are you sure we watched this?
I'm sure we watched it.
Okay. He's directed a lot of movies. I know that.
He didn't direct that movie, I don't think, but he was one of the characters in it. And so was the guy who played, well, actually, Andy Lau was in it, and the guy who plays Snowblower was also in it. And the movies are 7 years apart, so one's a 90s movie and one's a 2000s movie.
Okay.
But when I think of Hong Kong comedy, that's what I think of. And I thought I was going to like this one at first. Okay. But obviously 2000s was a different era altogether. So, I didn't find this all out until after I had watched this movie, and I do my research about what people thought of it afterward.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
I don't like to be jaded by what someone else has said. And so, but when I saw all those connections to one of my all-time favorite Hong Kong comedies, it was just like, man, directing really has an effect on things. Time period that they're made really has an effect on things, so it was just like, it was just really weird. I don't know. If we didn't watch Future Cops, we have to watch Future Cops because I love that movie.
He directed Infernal Affairs, which, is very different in tone, but that's very good. And he directed, I don't know did you ever see the remake of the Flying Guillotines that came out in 2012?
No, I didn't see that.
He did that. I don't even remember how I felt about that, but I do remember that movie looking and feeling very different from this film. That might be an interesting movie for us to do at one point, actually.
The Flying Guillotine?
It's just called The Guillotines, or The Guillotines, however, I don't know how you pronounce it, but whichever way. And it's an... what I recall was that it was kind of an interesting take on it. I remember there being a few scenes that had an impact on me, but I really can't remember, if I thought it was a good or a bad movie. Which isn't necessarily a reflection on the movie itself. I just watch a lot of movies like this, and I remember watching it when it came out, and then, I never watched it again. So, but which again doesn't necessarily mean it's a good or a bad movie. It just means, I didn't think to watch it again. But now I'm thinking maybe go back and watch this. Yeah, I don't know. I thought that it was actually, again, for the kind of movie it is, I liked the style, so I don't have any directorial complaints, really. I think the only thing I would say is in some of the fight sequences where you and I had those criticisms, it might have been better to edit the fights differently or, go a slightly different way. But overall, I thought all that stuff was fine. So I don't know. What do you want me to go first, or do you want to go first for the rating and recommendation?
You can go first because I went first the last time.
All right. So I would actually give this. I would have to give it a 4, and maybe it's because I haven't quite settled into what a 3 means yet, because we're shifting to this 1 to 5 thing, and 3 feels so neutral that I'd have to have neutral feelings about the movie almost to give it a 3. Do you know what I mean? So I would give it a 4, not an enthusiastic 4, but a solid 4. And, I think it's a good evening of entertainment. It's a movie that I would like to see once or twice again, because I want to catch some of the other plot details that I might have missed. I want to see if things land differently the second viewing. And it caught my interest enough that it's just one of these movies where it's like, I want to spend time with these characters again. So I think it deserves a 4 from me. In terms of whether I'd recommend it to people, I would be cautious in who I recommend it to. Do you know what I mean? It's not a movie it's not like the 5 Venoms, where it's like, oh yeah, this is a movie I always recommend to people, or The Swordsman, or, any of these films where I feel like it's essential that you have to see it. But I think for somebody who's already got an interest in wuxia films and wants to see what's out there that isn't necessarily the typical fare, I would recommend this movie too. Do you know what I mean? I would say it's a good example of some of the tropes that are in wuxia that you might not see in like the mainstream wuxia movies. Do you know what I mean? Like there are types of characters and types of plot developments that are, a little bit off the beaten path that I think would make this worth checking out. And also the tone shifts and all that stuff. And because it's got sort of the effects driven style wuxia, it's something that I think, people should see if they haven't seen it before. But also I think, thinking on it, I feel like the story is really well structured and easy to follow. So there's also, if you like good story with your fighting, I think this movie has it. It's just a question of whether the comedy is going to land or not, and whether the shifts in tone will be difficult for the person to sort of stay focused on the plot. So yeah, I don't know. What would you give for your rating and recommendation?
Well, for mine, I'm going to give it a solid 3. It started out as a 1. It cruised on to a 2, and I'm settling on 3.
That's very good progress for a movie that started out as a 1, I would say.
Yeah. I really wanted to turn it off.
Yeah, I could tell. When you sent me your message, like sometimes Deanna will send me a message and I'll actually feel guilty that I made her watch a movie. Do you know what I mean? And this is one of those times where I was like, oh, she does not sound like she's enjoying herself at all. And so I immediately offered to watch another movie if we wanted to. But she was good about it. She's like, no, I'm going to watch this movie and I want to see what you feel about it. So I think it was good because we actually had like very different reactions to the movie. But
Yes.
but yeah, so you definitely had a strong initial reaction, I thought.
Yes, I had a very strong initial reaction, and I'm surprised I'm giving it a 3. But because of the relationships between the characters and the storyline was well written, really enjoyed the story. Even though the comedy didn't land well with me, I still think it's a good movie. It's, it's in the middle. It's not something that you shouldn't see, but it's not something, like you said, I would recommend to just about everybody, especially if they were just trying to get into the genre. I would wait a bit. I enjoyed it. I really did. And like I said, I did shed a tear, so I couldn't give it a 1 or a 2 when I had such a strong emotional reaction towards the end, but I knew I couldn't give it a 4 because it doesn't rank up with the other movies that I consider to be a 4. So that's why I settled on a 3. For all the reasons that you thought it was a 4, I'm settling on it for a 3. And plus the dubbing, you keep saying that the voices really, for you they didn't have an effect, but for me at the beginning the voices really had an effect, especially the female voices. And I guess I eventually got used to it, but they didn't sound as whiny as the movie went on. And I guess because it was more serious as the movie went on, so there was really no need for whiny voices. But the voices got better without all the whininess and the high. I don't know. It's not really high pitched, but I don't know.
It was anime and stuff. And I should say, it wasn't, for me, when I first started watching it, I was struck by it too. It's just that what happened was, as I was watching it, I was like, well, that kind of fits the tone for me. Do you know what I mean? It kind of has like a, I don't know, it's, and again, it would be interesting to watch this with the subtitles and like the Mandarin or the Cantonese track, just to see how differently it lands.
Yes.
If they're like, to see if they're going for the same effect that the dub was going for. But the reason that I ended up being okay with it was just because in the comedic beats, I was noticing that I was laughing, and I felt like that the dubbing must be working for me in these moments. But also, I'm generally like you. I think whenever we have these conversations, usually most people, like usually you and Deathblade and most other people, usually prefer the subtitles, and I tend to prefer the dubs simply because I like to be able to watch the visuals, and I find when I'm reading the subtitles, I get to, it's like I can't pay attention to two things at the same time. It's like a choice. It's like a horrible choice between, do I want to read that line or do I want to see how he's moving the sword? Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so I'm pretty forgiving of dubs too. So there is, I think that most people are going to be more likely to have your reaction than mine to the dubs.
I don't know. I tend to know more people that like dubs.
Okay.
And they think that the weirder the dub, the better.
Okay.
I don't know why. But in the groups that I'm in on Facebook, that seems to be whenever we have that dubbed versus sub, which always comes up once a week, it seems.
That, you know what, that we should do a dub versus sub conversation, because that is a whole, like, and I don't want to go on a tangent at the end here, but like, that is a whole thing unto itself. And I think what you're getting at is how when something's dubbed in that way, at a certain point, it almost becomes something new that's its own thing. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And if you like that thing, then that can sort of become a source of conflict when people are talking about whether a movie is good or bad, or whether the dub version is better than the sub version. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like you're watching this, whether it's subbed or dubbed, you're getting it through translation, but the dub can have a totally different effect on what that translation becomes. So I at some point we should do a whole episode on that with some points that you've seen raised in those conversations, because I'd be very interested.
Yes.
But yeah, and I'm not like a pro dub person. It's just that the worse that my eyes get over time, the more dubs just work for me for not getting distracted from the action, but also not getting sleepy while I'm watching the movie. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Getting the eye strain. Because usually what I do is I read during the day and then I watch movies to relax. And I started noticing a few years ago that I would consistently fall asleep halfway through whatever martial arts movie I was trying to watch that was subtitled at night, because I would start watching around 11, and then inevitably I would fall asleep midway through and have to finish the next day. So the dubs kind of stave that effect off for me. But yeah, so that's all besides the point. I think the bottom line is I gave it a 4, you gave it a 3. It's not going to be a movie for everybody, and it has things that will irk some people. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
It's not a perfect movie, or at least this version of it that we saw is not perfect. Maybe the subtitled version is impeccable and we don't know. Which is always I gotta say, I really wish Amazon would allow us to switch on to subtitles if we wanted to. I know that there's probably a reason that they can't do that, but it's a little bit annoying that when you watch it on Amazon Prime, you don't have that option, but if you have the DVD, that you would have that option.
Well, not all DVDs. I have some DVDs that are dubbed only, and you can't switch the track. So it's probably whatever DVD that they put on their streaming service is why that we can't switch.
No, it's not. It's not, because I have a lot of the movies on DVD, and a lot of them you can on the DVD version you can switch, but on the one that's on Prime they don't give you that option.
Maybe it has something to do with rights and stuff. I don't know.
I was thinking that, or maybe just space. Maybe it's more space to have both sound tracks available.
That's true.
So, but either way, it definitely could have had an effect here. But I have a feeling that this looks like the kind of movie that was meant to kind of go into certain territory. So I feel like even if it didn't have the dubs, you still might have had some of those reactions. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like some of it might have still been, I don't know, but I just have a suspicion that it's a certain kind of movie. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because even the actors, their physical expressions were very over the top when they were doing certain things. Do you know what I mean?
Well, Dragon Nines especially.
Yeah. Him, and I would also say Phoenix Princess too kind of had some of those moments.
At the beginning, but as her character became more in love and serious towards the end, her mannerisms became less dramatic and over the top, but more even keeled.
Which is a device that you often see, especially in the TV shows, where like a character starts out really young and kind of idiotic and goofy, and then by the end of it, they're like these really serious, sober. Yeah, which it works really well over the course of a 50-episode TV series. Here, it worked well too in her case. But yeah, so again, the name of the movie is The Duel. It came out in 2000. It is available on Amazon Prime, so people can go and check it out there for free if they have Amazon Prime, at least in the States, maybe not in the UK and Canada and stuff, I don't know. But you can check it out, and it's definitely an interesting one. And if you have any interest in Lu Xiaofeng, this would obviously be one to check out. So we'll be back on it next week, and until then, we will talk to you later.